At Sumiya Junior High School, Tsubaki Sawabe is practicing softball when she accidentally hits the ball through a window. Panicking, she rushes into the school building to retrieve it, only to find it in the music room, where it strikes Kousei Arima in the head, knocking him to the floor. Horrified, Tsubaki quickly grabs the ball, intending to escape unnoticed, but Kousei sits up, scolding her for breaking the window again, reminding her that it had just been fixed. Tsubaki defends herself, saying a slugger's skill is measured by the windows they break, sparking an argument. As Kousei kneels to clean the broken glass, Tsubaki warns him about the danger, but before anything can happen, Ryota Watari bursts into the room, teasing them about being childhood friends and next-door neighbors, joking they act like a married couple. Both Kousei and Tsubaki deny it. After school, Kousei, Tsubaki, and Ryota walk home together. Ryota suddenly gets excited after receiving a text from Keiko and rushes off without much explanation. Tsubaki watches him go, wondering what girls see in him. Curiously, she turns to Kousei and asks if there is anyone he has a crush on. Kousei hesitates before saying there is no one who would ever fall in love with him. Tsubaki, irritated by his pessimism, scolds him for being so down on himself and notes how dull his eyes seem. Kousei smiles and in return tells her that her eyes are bright and full of life, which makes her cheeks flush. As they near home, Tsubaki asks about Kousei's father. Kousei admits he isn't sure when his father will return, but reassures her that he's used to being on his own and that her family would help him if he ever needed it. The next day at school, Kousei reflects on Tsubaki's words. To him, the world feels monotone, like the black and white keys of a piano and the flat lines of a music score. He remembers the autumn when he was 11, the season he stopped playing the piano. Later, Tsubaki finds him alone in a classroom. She mentions that tomorrow is Saturday and invites him to join her for a meetup with a girl from her class who wants to meet Ryota. Tsubaki also mentions the girl plays classical music and thinks Kousei, being a pianist, will have plenty to talk about. Kousei reminds her that he stopped playing 2 years ago. Tsubaki calls him a liar since she saw him play just the other day. He explains it was only for work, transcribing songs by ear, not playing for himself. This conversation triggers memories of his mother's dream for him to become a world-class pianist. She ran a music school and pushed him to practice relentlessly. He recalls her harsh discipline and how she would yell and even hit him if he tried to stop. Her goal was for him to achieve what she couldn't and make it big in Europe. Kousei agreed, hoping to make her happy, but when he finally had a European competition in reach, his mother passed away, leaving him with deep resentment toward the piano, though he can't fully let it go. The next day, Kousei arrives early at the park and notices a pair of yellow shoes hanging from a tree and a pair of leggings draped over a bush. Following a melodious tune, he discovers Kaori Miyazono playing a melodica, surrounded by children playing their own instruments, creating a playful, harmonious melody that attracts pigeons. As Kaori stops playing, tears fall from her eyes, but she quickly wipes them away and resumes playing. Kousei, moved by the sight, smiles and starts recording the moment on his phone. When a gust of wind catches Kaori's skirt, she notices him filming and assumes the worst. She rushes over, accusing him of taking advantage of the situation. In the chaos, she realizes he's holding her shoes and leggings. Kousei explains the whole situation is a coincidence. Just then, Tsubaki and Ryota arrive and Kaori reveals she's Ryota's date. She also shares that she is a violinist preparing for a performance at a nearby concert hall. Without hesitation, she grabs Kousei's hand and pulls him along, insisting that he join her. They rush toward the concert hall, determined to arrive on time. When they finally get there, the atmosphere is thick with tension as the competition looms. Kaori bids them goodbye, heading to the area where she's supposed to be. Meanwhile, Kousei, Ryota, and Tsubaki make their way to the auditorium. As they walk, Kousei begins to feel anxious. Ryota notices and asks if he's all right. Kousei reassures him, saying there's nothing wrong. However, when he opens the door and sees the banner for the second annual Towa music competition for violin, his nerves only heighten. Tsubaki comments that she hasn't been to the venue since 6th grade when she came to cheer for Kousei. As they settle into their seats, people begin to notice Kousei. He's famously known as the youngest person to ever win the Psyche competition, and whispers ripple through the crowd. Kousei scolds Tsubaki for not telling him they were coming to watch Kaori perform. Tsubaki explains that she knew if he'd known beforehand, he would have refused to come. As the first round of preliminaries begin, each contestant plays the same set piece with a piano accompanist. Kaori is the 4th contestant to take the stage. When she starts to play, it's immediately clear she's not following the standard interpretation. Her performance is bold and unique, captivating the audience. Everyone rises to their feet, applauding Kaori's performance except for Kousei, who remains still, stunned by what he's just witnessed. Despite the ovation, he can't help but think she won't win. Her interpretation is filled with personal deviations from the score, and such liberties are considered a taboo in classical music. However, deep down he senses that winning isn't Kaori's true aim. He wonders how she can be so happy while performing, even when she knows that the judges will deduct points for her approach. During the 15-minute break, 2 young girls approach Kaori, offering her flowers in gratitude for her performance. Kousei watches as Kaori runs towards Ryota. Her movements almost cinematic, like a scene straight out of a romance movie. Soon, Kaori runs toward Kousei and asks what he thought of her performance. Kousei replies that it wasn't bad, adding that it's the first time he's ever seen someone receive flowers after the prelims. The fact that a stranger gave them to her, evidently moved by her performance, speaks volumes. Kaori smiles, pleased by his words. When the results are posted, Kaori has made it to the second round. The next day, since Ryota has soccer practice after school, Kaori offers to stand in for him and spend time with Kousei in the meantime. Kousei and Kaori sit at a cafe, where Kaori eyes the caramel waffles topped with apples and nuts. She excitedly takes pictures of her meal. Kaori then takes her first bite and is amazed by its deliciousness. Kousei watches her, admiring her reaction. The sound of a piano catches their attention, and they turn to see a little girl playing. Kaori approaches the girl playing the piano and asks if she's playing Mozart. The girl replies that she is, though she hasn't mastered the piece yet. Kaori agrees that it is a difficult one. Kousei observes how easily Kaori gets along with the girls. Kaori then tells the girls that Kousei can play the piece very well and points at him, suggesting they ask him to teach them. Kousei nearly chokes on his coffee when he hears this. Kaori orders Kousei to play, not wanting him to disappoint the kids. Soon, the sound of Kousei's piano fills the cafe as he begins to play a variation of the melody, impressing everyone around. However, he suddenly stops in the middle of the performance and leaves without finishing the piece. Kaori finds Kousei outside the cafe, crouched down as he feeds a stray cat. A few moments later, Kaori sits beside him, bringing up his past as a pianist. She acknowledges that he quit playing and recalls his previous achievements, describing his style as disciplined, precise, like a human metronome. She mentions that there is no musician in their generation who hasn't heard of him. She asks why he stopped playing. Kousei hesitates before opening up, revealing that he can no longer hear the sound of the piano when he plays. Kaori gasps in surprise, reminding him that she just saw him perform in the cafe. He explains that he can hear the notes at first, but as he becomes more absorbed in his performance, the sounds fade away until they vanish completely. He admits that he believes that this is a punishment. Kaori, frustrated, tells him to stop acting like a child and urges him to find a solution. She insists that playing is the only way people like them survive. Her words strike a chord with him, and he smiles, agreeing with her determination. Kaori declares that she has decided to make him her accompanist for the second round of her competition. Kousei is stunned, immediately protesting that he can't do it. But Kaori, firm in her decision, insists that she has already made up her mind. Tsubaki and Kaori take matters into their own hands, plastering the chosen set piece for the competition all over Kousei's school and even at his home. Each corner he turns, he's met with reminders of Kaori's request, and his frustration builds with every encounter. Eventually, Kaori finds him alone on the school rooftop. Despite her efforts, Kousei remains firm, continuing to refuse her request. He opens up, admitting he's scared and fearful of the stage, of failing, and of confronting the silence that consumes him whenever he plays. Kaori listens quietly before reassuring him. She tells him that she's there for him, reminding him that even if they can't deliver a perfect performance, as long as they have the chance to play and an audience willing to listen, that's enough. Her persistence doesn't waver. She pleads with him. Finally, when he notices her tears staining the ground, something shifts within him. Kousei agrees. Kaori's expression lights up in a relieved smile, but their moment is quickly interrupted by Ryota and Tsubaki bursting through the rooftop door. They rush to Toa Hall on their bikes, the wind whipping past them as they pedal furiously. Tsubaki glances at Kaori, asking if they'll be okay since they haven't had a chance to rehearse together. Kaori smiles, offering a confident reassurance that they'll be fine. As soon as they arrive, Kaori grabs Kousei and pulls him aside, waving goodbye to Tsubaki and Ryota. Ryota watches them disappear into the hall, wondering aloud if Kousei will be able to pull this off. Tsubaki, her eyes fixed on the door, replies that she believes spring will come. Inside the hallway, Kousei is nervous. He regrets not spending enough time practicing, wishing he had memorized the piece so thoroughly that he wouldn't need the music sheet at all. His anxiety deepens as he thinks about Kaori's talent as a violinist. Sensing his distress, Kaori abruptly headbutts him, snapping him out of his spiraling thoughts. He looks at her in surprise as she calmly meets his gaze, telling him not to worry. She asks him to look at her, and when he does, she quietly expresses her belief in him. When they're called to the stage, Kaori grabs Kousei's hand and they sprint forward together. As they run, Kousei feels a rush, comparing the sensation to being on a roller coaster. He tells her that she feels like freedom itself. Kaori turns to him with a smile, correcting him that music is freedom. The audience murmurs in surprise when they realize that Kousei, the renowned prodigy who disappeared from the spotlight, is going to be Kaori's accompanist. They begin the set piece slowly and quietly, but the tempo soon picks up, the playing style growing more intense. As Kousei plays, he notices the haunting shadows of his mother within the audience. The notes on the music sheet seem to vanish before his eyes, and he feels the familiar sensation of being trapped at the bottom of an ocean, the sound of the piano slipping away. His accompaniment spirals out of control, and it becomes evident to everyone that he's out of sync. Confusion ripples through the audience as he suddenly stops playing altogether. Kaori continues her performance alone for a moment, but she too halts, leaving the audience in shock, believing their performance has ended in failure. Kaori turns to Kousei, urging him to try again. He decides that if he can't hear the sound, he'll imagine it and feel it with his entire being. Determined, Kousei begins to play once more, channeling his fears into his music. He matches Kaori's intensity, and together they bring the piece to a powerful conclusion. As they finish, the audience rises in a standing ovation, the hall erupting in applause. But the celebration is cut short when Kaori suddenly collapses on the stage. Tsubaki, Ryota, and Kousei visit Kaori at the hospital. They gather around her bed. Kaori explains that her dad was worried, so she's here for routine testing just to make sure everything is fine. Kousei, still concerned, asks if she has ever passed out like that before. Kaori smiles, reassuring them that it's the first time this has happened. She admits that she's always been anemic and sees this hospital visit as a good opportunity for thorough testing. Kaori playfully adds that she probably pushed herself too hard with all her violin practice and jokes that chasing after Kousei to get him to perform with her didn't help either. Though they didn't make it to the next round of the competition, Kaori doesn't utter a word of reproach. Kousei, however, feels a deep sense of guilt, convinced that it was his fault they didn't advance. As Kousei walks along, he passes by the soccer field where Ryota is practicing. Ryota notices him and startles Kousei, snapping a picture of his shocked expression. He laughs, saying he'll send the photo to Kaori. Then Ryota casually suggests that they visit her together the next day and bring her a present, adding that she's set to be discharged from the hospital the day after tomorrow. Meanwhile, Tsubaki is struggling to focus during her softball practice. Her thoughts are scattered, and her friend Nao notices. Nao points out that Tsubaki hasn't been herself lately and asks if something happened between her and Kousei. Tsubaki grows flustered, denying that anything is wrong. Nao isn't convinced, remarking that Tsubaki's eyes seem cloudy, as if something is weighing on her. During their conversation, they encounter Saito, the former captain of the softball team. Tsubaki once admired him deeply, harboring unspoken feelings for him throughout her school years. On the day of his graduation, her love faded away like melting snow, a quiet end to what she once thought was a significant crush. When Kaori is discharged and returns to school, Kousei wants to speak to her but finds himself holding back. After school, he unexpectedly runs into her at a bridge where Kaori is playing hopscotch with a group of children. The kids giggle and reveal that she's been waiting for someone, though she urges them to keep quiet about it. Kaori then turns to Kousei, her eyes gleaming with determination, and asks him to enter a piano competition. Her request surprises him, but before he can respond, Kaori dives into the river below the bridge, her laughter ringing out as she hits the water. Kousei follows her, plunging into the river. Her boldness draws him in, urging him to step out of his comfort zone once more. At Kousei's house, Kaori steps out of the shower and he hands her a towel along with a pair of his clothes. As she explores the house, Kaori walks into a room and spots a piano buried under a thick layer of dust, cluttered with books and scattered sheets of music. Her expression shifts, anger flashing in her eyes. She shoves everything off the piano, sending papers fluttering to the floor. Kousei, standing behind her with a cup of coffee, flinches at her outburst. Kaori starts wiping the dust off the piano, muttering about how wholesome playing begins with a wholesome environment. She heads to the window and throws open the curtains. At that moment, they lock eyes with Tsubaki, who is staring back at them from her window across the street. She freezes, taking in the sight of Kaori with wet hair dressed in Kousei's clothes. Tsubaki's face twists in shock and frustration, and it lingers with her in the following days, affecting her mood and making her aggressive during softball practice. Meanwhile, Kaori sits with Kousei, showing him a recording of his latest performance. He listens in disbelief, hearing how the tempo and sound are completely out of sync. Ryota and Tsubaki, standing by, don't hold back their criticism, bluntly telling him he sucks. Kousei's confidence wavers and he starts to doubt whether he should continue, but before he can voice his hesitation, Kaori reveals that she has already submitted his entry for the upcoming competition, much to his shock. She gives him a reassuring smile, urging him to imagine how he wants to play the piece. With a finally encouraging word, Kaori and the others leave, giving Kousei the space to practice and reflect on his music. In the following days, while Kousei practices diligently, he notices Kaori has dozed off nearby. He quietly approaches her and gently covers her with his jacket. For a moment, he just stands there, gazing at her peaceful expression, thinking how much she resembles an angel. Later, as Kaori walks home with Tsubaki, she chatters on about Kousei. Her tone is a mix of excitement and concern. She wants him to play again but worries about pushing him too hard, fearing it might make him suffer. Tsubaki listens, feeling an uneasy weight in her chest. She realizes how close Kousei and Kaori are becoming, leaving her feeling left out. That evening, on a whim, she calls Saito and asks him to be her boyfriend. In the music room, Kousei continues his practice, lost in the notes. Kaori appears and hands him a cold bottle of milk as a reward for his hard work. Then unexpectedly, she asks if he hates her. The question catches him off guard. Tears well up in Kaori's eyes as she admits her fears, wondering if she's making him suffer by pushing him to face something he's been trying to avoid. Kousei tells her that taking on challenges and creating something meaningful can be painful but is also fulfilling. He smiles softly, thanking her for giving him the push he needed. Kaori's tears turn into a small smile as relief washes over her. The next day, Kousei and Kaori watched Tsubaki play in the regional softball tournament. As Tsubaki runs around the bases, her mind drifts to how much she dislikes not being the one beside Kousei anymore and how he looks at Kaori now. Distracted by her thoughts, she loses focus and missteps, injuring her foot just before sliding into the home plate. The mistake costs her team the game. Afterward, Kousei gives Tsubaki a piggyback ride on their way home as she cries over causing her team to lose. The next day, Tsubaki, Kousei, and Kaori are at the soccer field, cheering for Ryota as he plays in a crucial match. The game is tense, and in the final moments, Ryota has a chance to score. He kicks, but the ball narrowly misses the goal, and his team loses. Despite the disappointment, Kousei finds him afterward and tells him he did well. Ryota forces a smile, appreciating his friend's support. Later, in the restroom, Ryota stands alone. Tears start streaming down his cheeks as he wonders if he'll have to wait until high school to finally become a star. He clenches his fists and vows not to lose next time. Meanwhile, Kousei is fully immersed in practicing his chosen piece for the upcoming competition, playing it repeatedly until he can perform it by heart. Even during class, he taps out the finger movements on his desk, earning a scolding from the teacher, who reminds him they're in the middle of a lesson. During the physical education, Kousei trips and falls, causing his classmates to rush over and check if he's all right. Hearing what happened, Kaori runs to the infirmary to see him. She finds him lying on the bed and scolds him for skipping meals and passing out, reminding him that his body is an important asset, especially with the competition approaching. As they walk together, they stop at a park, and Kousei opens up about his past. He tells her that when he was a child, he had a black cat named Chelsea, who would sneakily eat his candy when he wasn't looking. One day, Chelsea scratched his hand deeply, leaving it bleeding non-stop. The next day, his mother took the cat away and abandoned her far from home. Now, whenever he looks at the scars Chelsea left, he's reminded of his mother. He admits that ever since that day, he feels as if he has been living in her shadow. Kaori listens quietly, then reassures him with a gentle smile, telling him that he isn't living in his mother's shadow. He's just being himself, finding his own way forward. Kaori then places her hand over Kousei's and tells him that when he feels down, it helps to rest his head on his arms for comfort. As she places her hands over his, she comments on its size, calling them the hands of a pianist. Then she adds that his hand seems happy to be touching hers. Kousei blushes. On the day of the competition, Kousei steps into the concert hall, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Scanning the room, he spots Takeshi Aiza and Emi Igawa, both renowned piano prodigies who once admired and envied him. As children, they had always been second to Kousei in competitions. Meanwhile, in the restroom, Ryota overhears a group of people talking negatively about Kousei. They criticize him. Ryota shares the incident with Tsubaki and Kaori, wondering aloud if people actually hate Kousei. Kaori explains that Kousei's ability to follow the score precisely, playing exactly as the composer intended, is a remarkable skill. However, in a competition, judges often only evaluate the level of accuracy. She notes that while this might be enough for him to win, it doesn't always sit well with people. As the piano competition begins, Kousei sits in the hallway, scared out of his mind. The announcer calls Takeshi Aiza to the stage. Kousei looks down, his nerves taking over. He recalls Kaori, telling him to be confident in himself. Takeshi declines an invitation to an international piano competition in Germany, believing that Kousei will finally make his return after a 2-year absence. On stage, Takeshi plays with everything he has, driven by the desire to surpass Kousei. His talent captivates the audience. Takeshi's goal is to win this competition against Kousei. Even Kousei watches his performance. As Takeshi finishes, the audience erupts in cheers. Backstage, Emi approaches Kousei and tells him that her brother's growth is because of him, and that he is the reason Takeshi has reached such heights. Takeshi steps off the stage, relief washing over him as he looks at his trembling hands. Meanwhile, the committee discusses how Takeshi has a strong presence and made no significant mistakes during his performance. While he may not seem it, they acknowledge that he is a diligent player, having won first place in all his recent competitions. In contrast, his sister, Emi, has fallen behind, unable to keep up with the pack. Kousei tells him he did an amazing job, and Takeshi, though clearly pleased, brushes it off casually as if it were nothing. Ryota stares at the picture of Emi in the competition program, admitting out loud that she's cute. He quickly realizes Kaori is nearby. Kaori asks if she can take a look at the picture, noting that Emi is popular too. Tsubaki recognizes Emi and Takeshi, recalling how when she was a child and used to cheer for Kousei, they were always in second and third place. Kaori mentions that Emi has been struggling lately, receiving an honorable mention at the Kumagai competition and not making it past the preliminaries. After a 15-minute intermission, Emi walks onto the stage for her performance. She recalls how she vowed to become better at the piano after going to cheer for a friend and ending up in awe of Kousei's talent. But when Kousei disappeared from the scene, she lost her motivation, struggling to live up to her potential. Now, with Kousei finally back, she pours her emotions into the piece. The audience listens in silence, captivated by the raw emotion in her playing. When she finishes, the hall fills with thunderous applause. Takashi is amazed by his sister's performance, and so is Kousei, who clutches his chest. Emi, breathing heavily, rushes backstage. Without hesitation, she strides towards Kousei, grabs him by the shirt, and pulls him close. Takashi watches, half expecting to witness a love confession. But Emi lets go, her expression softening. She mutters an apology before quickly excusing herself to go change. Takashi feels a pang of disappointment, thinking his sister missed her chance to confess. However, Emi knows she has no words left. She poured every emotion she had into her performance, letting the piano speak for her. Kousei's heart pounds as he prepares to take the stage. He wonders if it's the 2-year absence that has him on edge, or the powerful performances by Takashi and Emi that have stirred something inside him. Their music has touched his soul, making him see for the first time that music has colors and even a scent. As he steps onto the stage, a memory flashes in his mind of young Tsubaki standing outside his house, asking him to come play with her. His body was covered in bruises and he refused, explaining that he was in the middle of practice with his mother. His mother's harsh voice called him back inside, scaring Tsubaki away. Another memory surfaces, visiting his mother in hospital. She asked him how the Nagi Memorial competition went. He handed her the first place certificate with a hopeful smile. She told him it made her feel better, that his achievements were the best medicine for her. Kousei remembers how desperately he wanted to win every competition, clinging to the belief that his victories could somehow heal his dying mother. Kousei begins to play and the audience smiles, captivated by the sound. Emi watches intently, noticing his unparalleled accuracy. His performance is a mirror image of the score, flawlessly executed. As he plays, Kousei is haunted by his mother's words that a musician must be a mirror that reflects the score, or they will never win. The memory stings, and the weight of those expectations presses down on him. He recalls how, in his frustration, he once wished for her death, unable to bear her strictness and abusive attitude. After she passed, the regret over his words consumed him. Now, the same feeling resurfaces, drowning him once more. He feels as if he is sinking in an ocean, helpless. The music blurs around him, and he suddenly can't hear the notes anymore. Panic rises as he begins to unravel, losing grip on the music that had once been second nature. It's then that Emi hears the rumors, whispers that Kousei can no longer hear the notes he plays. Kousei plays the piece with rough, hurried movements, his fingers stumbling over the keys. He struggles to focus, but his mother's voice fills his mind, accusing him of this being his punishment for rejecting her dreams. The music becomes disjointed, each note falling out of place. As he slows down, doubt creeps in, and for a moment, he considers stopping entirely. Emi watches in growing concern, sensing that he might quit mid-performance. Tsubaki, seated in the audience, silently prays that he doesn't give up, hoping he'll keep going. A memory of Kaori's words comes to Kousei, her encouragement about the entry number and Mozart's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The stars will shine over his head. It sparks something within him. Takashi, observing from the side, feels bewildered. The Kousei Arima he once looked up to, the brilliant pianist, seems lost, as if the 2 years away from the stage have taken their toll. Kousei halts for a moment, his gaze shifting to Kaori in the audience. He remembers how she played again during her own performance, and something about that act ignites a spark inside him. He plays on, this time dedicating the music to her. The music shifts, it becomes full of life, pulsing with emotion. It's as if the music has found its soul, shining like stars in the night sky. The sound resonates with rawness, as if it's been pulled from the depths of his heart, and he realizes it's Kaori's influence that has helped him find his way back to the music. When he finishes, the room falls into an almost stunned silence. The audience sits, awestruck, before applause begins, slow at first, but growing into a heartfelt appreciation. During the intermission, Kousei encounters members of the jury. One of them tells him that a competition is a garden of music, a place to showcase skill, not to find oneself before walking away. Kousei's path then crosses with Hiroko Seto, Japan's leading pianist and his mother's close friend, alongside her daughter, Koharu. When Hiroko spots Kousei, she pulls him into a hug. Hiroko, lost in the moment, isn't thinking about the people around. Her mind is flooded with the memory of the first time she held him as a baby. She recalls how his mother, initially hesitant to push him toward the rigorous world of piano, never intended for him to become a professional. However, Hiro believed that Kousei was destined for greatness. Eventually, she releases him from the embrace and she asks if he's waiting for the competition results. Kousei, with a smile, admits that he's not particularly hopeful, knowing that he didn't perform his best. Hiroko, however, playfully hits him, insisting that he did great. Hiroko teases Kousei, playfully telling him that she could tell he was emitting love during his performance. However, Kousei knows the truth, that he was really showing his gratitude, and it was directed toward the girl who likes his best friend, Ryota. When the results of the piano competition are posted, Emi is visibly upset that she can't find Kousei's name. Kousei watches as some contestants celebrate their success, others vow to push harder next year, and a few break down in tears, realizing that this was their last shot. Takushi snaps at Kousei, asking what he's been doing during his 2-year absence. He accuses Kousei of flip-flopping between styles, resulting in the train wreck of a performance that was so evident on stage. Kousei only smiles, seemingly unfazed by the failure, accepting it. He admits that he didn't slack off during his preparation. He practiced hard for the competition, but it still fell apart. This is who he is now. At home, Kaori receives a letter from the Towa Music Competition Executive Committee. The next day, Hiroko visits Kousei, but after ringing the doorbell several times without an answer, she notices that the door is already open. Stepping inside, she finds Kousei collapsed on the floor, having fallen asleep after playing the piano all night. He makes a cup of coffee for her, and she tells him that she honestly didn't think he would pick up the piano again. She then asks him what inspires him now. Later, while hanging out with Ryota and Tsubaki, Kousei casually mentions that summer break is almost here. Just then, Kaori bursts through the door, full of energy, and announces that there will be no time for rest. She waves the letter she received in front of him, revealing that they have both been selected to participate in a gala concert at the concert hall. Excited, she invites Kousei to accompany her once again. Hiroko offers to become Kousei's piano teacher, and he accepts. That night, Kousei and Kaori walk into a field of fireflies. Kaori looks around at the glowing insects and remarks that despite their fragility and short lives, they shine with all their might. She adds that their light is like the essence of life itself, brief, yet radiant. As summer school begins, Tsubaki hears the faint sound of piano and violin drifting from the music preparation room. There, Kousei and Kaori are practicing for the gala concert. Kaori abruptly stops playing and glares at Kousei, throwing a bottle at him in frustration. She scolds him for being distracted, accusing him of playing without enthusiasm. Kousei, feeling uncertain, questions whether they should perform this particular piece for the concert, suggesting something more glamorous instead. Kaori, however, firmly rejects the idea, insisting on this piece, confident that if played well, it will have the impact they're aiming for. At home, Kousei sits at the piano to practice the piece, but struggling as memories flood back. He recalls a time from his childhood drifting asleep under the piano while his mother played. Her voice was soft as she told him to wake up before catching a cold. But the memory shifts. Her gentle smile twists into a harsh expression as she reminds him of the punishment of not hearing the notes correctly. Just then, Hiroko enters the room and switches on the light, noticing his troubled expression. She takes him out to a nearby festival, giving him a chance to clear his mind. Later, Kousei asks if his mother, Saki, ever despised him. Hiroko reassures him that no mother could despise their child. She tells him that the day he lashed out at his mother, wishing for her death, was the moment he matured as both a person and a pianist. Hiroko encourages him to play the piano. At night, Kousei walks Kaori home under the clear sky. They pause for a moment, captivated by the beauty of the stars. They both start humming Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. When they reach Kaori's house, he notices the warm glow of the family-owned pastry shop. Her parents greet them, and Kaori mentions that they are fans of his. Later, Kousei says his goodbyes and heads home. The next day, during practice, Kousei and Kaori struggle to synchronize their playing. The tension builds, so they decide to take a break. Together with Tsubaki, Ryota, and Nao, they gather by the school swimming pool and play with fireworks, the crackling lights illuminating their laughter. Nao asks Kousei and Kaori if they plan to attend music school after high school. Kaori admits she hasn't thought much about her future, but confidently states that she and Kousei will perform brilliantly at the upcoming gala concert. Amid the playful atmosphere, Tsubaki accidentally pushes Kousei into the swimming pool. As he sinks into the water, memories of Hiroko's advice surface, urging him to listen to music from his heart, not just his ears. The realization stirs within him before he loses consciousness. Moments later, he wakes up on the pool's edge, surrounded by his worried friends, with Ryota having pulled him out just in time. On the day of the concert, Ryota repeatedly calls Kaori's phone, but there's no answer. With each unanswered call, Kousei's worry deepens. Hiroko urges him to head backstage, insisting they get him prepared just in case Kaori arrives late. She instructs Ryota to keep calling until someone picks up, while the murmurs of excitement from the audience fill the air, eager to witness Kousei and Kaori's much-anticipated performance. Backstage, Hideko approaches Miike, another pianist scheduled to perform that evening. She asks if he can go before Kousei and Kaori since Kaori hasn't shown up yet. Miike, however, refuses, adamant about performing last to secure his moment in the spotlight. With time running out and no sign of Kaori, Kousei makes a decision. He steps onto the stage alone, drawing gasps from the audience. The murmur of confusion sweeps the crowd as everyone realizes he's about to perform alone. Determined to prove himself and honor Kaori's absence, Kousei sits at the piano, ready to show the world his talent and Kaori's inspiration. He begins playing a piano transcription of the set piece originally meant for the violin and piano. As his fingers glide over the keys, he recalls Hideko's advice about playing with his heart, not just his ears. Kousei pours his emotions into each note, embracing the music fully. The memories of his mother, Saki, flash through his mind, but this time he doesn't flinch. Instead, he uses them as fuel, coming to terms with his past and his deep connection to her through the piano. The audience is captivated, their initial surprise turning into awe as they watch Kousei play with a passion that fills the entire hall. Backstage, Hideko watches him, her eyes welling up with tears. It's as if she's seeing Saki herself on stage, playing with that same raw intensity. Her thoughts drift to a memory from years ago, a fierce argument with Saki after she caught her hitting Kousei during a lesson. Hideko had snapped, yelling that all Kousei ever wanted was to make his mother happy. In that moment, Saki collapsed, acknowledging with a pained expression that she knew her son was giving his all, but she felt her time was running out. Saki admitted she knew her time was short, and she couldn't afford to waste a single moment. So she pushed Kousei relentlessly because she wanted him to become a great pianist, someone capable of standing on his own when she was no longer there to guide him. Her harsh training wasn't just about perfecting his technique. It was her desperate way of ensuring he could support himself in a world without her. Another memory surfaces of Hideko finding Kousei backstage after a piano competition, tears streaming down his face as he wondered where the piano keys had disappeared, lost in his own grief and confusion. It was then she felt a heavy guilt, knowing that it was her influence, not Saki's desire, that had pushed Kousei down this path of becoming a pianist. As she watches him now, she sees the culmination of all that pain and struggle transformed into a breathtaking performance that touches everyone present. Kousei realizes that the shadow of his mother has been his own creation, born from the guilt he's carried for years. But now as he plays, he understands that she isn't out there judging him from a distance. Instead, she is a part of him, woven into every note he plays. Feeling this connection to both his mother and Kaori, Kousei experiences a sense of freedom he has never known before. He knows he can finally move forward. As he finishes the piece, a light applause fills the hall. The ghost of Saki no longer haunts him. He silently says his goodbye, letting go of the sorrow that has held him back. He steps off the stage and into the hallway, where he collapses into Hideko's arms, crying openly. It's a release of years of remorse, replaced by a quiet, profound happiness. The next day, Kousei heads to the music preparation room, hoping to see Kaori. He sits at the piano, waiting, but the room remains empty. He realizes with a pang that he doesn't have her phone number or email, and he barely knows anything about her beyond their shared moments of music. Just then, Tsubaki bursts into the room, her face pale with worry. She hurriedly tells him that Kaori has been admitted to the hospital after collapsing again. Kousei's heart sinks, and without a word, he rushes out, sprinting all the way to the hospital. When he finally reaches her room and pushes the door open, he freezes. Kaori is on the hospital bed, her pale face momentarily blurring with the image of his mother. Kaori's cheerful voice breaks the silence. She greets him with a bright smile, explaining that she wanted to let him know what was going on, but she was out of commission. The next day, Tsubaki, Ryota, and Kousei visit Kaori again. They ask her how she's feeling, and she cheerfully responds that she's doing great, though she's still stuck in the hospital because they need to run a couple of tests. Ryota teases her, suggesting that she fainted because she missed him. Kousei frowns and asks why they're running tests again since they did that last time. Kaori brushes it off, explaining that the doctors just want to make sure everything's okay. She mentions how she collapsed, hit her head, and her parents, worried, rushed her to the hospital. She beams when Tsubaki hands her the tarts, expressing how amazed she is by their taste. Ryota also brought her books so she wouldn't get bored, but Kousei notices she's trying too hard to act cheerful even though it's clear she's not feeling well. As they leave, a nurse enters Kaori's room. Kaori calmly tells her that she can resume the IV drip. Tsubaki receives a text from Saito, asking if she'd like to go with him to the festival. Now, sitting nearby, notes that Tsubaki might have romantic feelings for Kousei, not Saito. Tsubaki quickly denies it, insisting she only sees Kousei as a brother. She reminds Nao that they've done everything together since they were young, and there's nothing more to it. But Nao isn't convinced. She tells Tsubaki to stop pretending, pointing out that she's scared. Scared that if she makes any move, the relationship she has with Kousei will be destroyed. That night, Kousei visits Kaori again at the hospital. He tells her that instead of going home, he decided to play the set piece by himself at the gala concert. He realizes that she chose this piece because of him. Kaori asks why he didn't withdraw, and Kousei explains that midway through playing, the notes disappeared, but in their place, his memories of his mother transformed into music. He looks at Kaori, his voice softer now, and tells her that he's afraid. He hopes she doesn't leave him the way his mother did. The next day, Kaori insists that Kousei needs to keep practicing, but Ryota and Tsubaki can't seem to understand what's going on. Ryota, noticing that Tsubaki is acting off, grows concerned. Later, Nao spots Tsubaki with Saito. She reaches out to Ryota for advice. He tells her that if anyone tells Tsubaki she's wrong, she'll get stubborn and things will become complicated, especially when it comes to Kousei. Ryota advises her to let Tsubaki figure out her feelings on her own. By the end of the school day, the teacher approaches Kousei and asks if he's made up his mind about which school he plans to attend. The teacher offers him some time to think it over before making a decision. While hanging out with Saito, Tsubaki can't help but keep talking about Kousei. Saito, noticing her preoccupation, asks if she's really sure she only sees Kousei as a brother. Later, Kousei and Tsubaki walk barefoot on the beach. But when Kousei reveals that he plans to move away to attend an early college for music, Tsubaki runs off in tears. Tsubaki arrives at school, but all she can think about is Kousei's words. As she walks down the hallway, she overhears him talking to his teacher, informing him that he's leaving home to attend a prestigious music school. She frowns, but a glimmer of hope fills her eyes when she hears that it's based on competition rankings and the reputation of the instructor. However, her expression darkens when Kousei continues, mentioning that his piano teacher has suggested he look into studying overseas. This angers Tsubaki. During her softball practice, Tsubaki trips and falls, leaving her bruised. Later, when she walks into the classroom with bandages on her forehead, Ryota and Kousei burst out laughing at her appearance. Annoyed, she grabs a broom, ready to hit them, but instead she storms off. Kousei notices that Tsubaki has been acting strange and asks Nao if she knows what's going on with her. Nao responds, telling him to leave her alone. Tsubaki begins to realize that Nao might be right. She does have feelings for Kousei. As she walks with Saito later, he tells her that he's met someone he likes. His words shock her. He continues, explaining that the girl is older and the manager of the baseball team. He then says that they should stop seeing each other. Tsubaki stares at him in silence, and Saito goes on, saying he's noticed how she always seems so confused and laughs like she doesn't know what to do around him, while he feels that they are complete opposites. Tsubaki apologizes and starts crying. She tells Kousei as he plays the piano that she wants him to comfort her. Frustrated, Tsubaki watches her friends moving forward, fearing that she might be left behind. The next day, Kousei hesitates to visit Kaori in a hospital, but on his way there, he encounters a girl who falls from a tree, landing on top of him. He helps her up and decides to take her to see Hiroko. The girl introduces herself as Nagi Aiza, an aspiring pianist and Takshi's younger sister. Nagi plays a little on the piano, and Hiroko encourages Kousei to become her piano teacher. Kousei attempts to visit Kaori again, but as he approaches her room, he overhears Ryota talking inside. Kaori then calls him on the phone, asking him to bring her some cannelis the next day. Later, as Kaori weakly walks down the hospital hallway, she suddenly collapses to the floor, unable to get up. Kousei watches Nagi finish her performance, analyzing every detail as she plays. Once she finishes, Hiroko nudges him forward, urging him to provide feedback. He begins listing out her mistakes and areas for improvement, from technical flaws to specific finger placements. Nagi, overwhelmed, protests, claiming her small hands make it difficult to reach the keys properly. Kousei, unfazed, suggests adjusting her wrist movement to hit certain notes more easily. She argues that even perfect technique won't secure a win, since the most critical factor is having an impeccable score. Kousei pauses, remembering Kaori's words about playing with sincerity and giving every performance his all. He reflects on the idea that a musical score isn't an untouchable, flawless entity, but rather an emotional creation by humans, one that can feel restrictive yet profoundly moving. Later, Kousei decides to visit Kaori. She greets him with a playful grin, pretending not to recognize him. The act startles him, making him briefly wonder if she has amnesia from a recent accident. She asks about Ryota, and he informs her that he's still at school. They spend the afternoon at the mall, wandering through various shops. Along the way, they encounter a lost child looking for her mother. Kaori gently takes the child's hand. They make an announcement at the information desk, and they wait until the child's mother arrives to reunite with her. Kousei notices Kaori still in her school uniform and feels a wave of relief wash over him. He realizes he'd been worried for nothing. He asks her where her school bag is, but she avoids his gaze for a moment before suggesting they go retrieve it together. Kousei agrees, and they head back to look for it. Meanwhile, back at the practice room, Nagi grows frustrated as she waits for Kousei, who hasn't showed up yet. Her annoyance is palpable, and Hiroko, sensing her mood, steps in with a sharp warning. She tells Nagi that if she ever tries to hurt Kousei, she won't hesitate to retaliate herself. Kousei and Kaori eventually arrive at the school searching for her bag. As they look around, he starts to notice something off. He realizes that her bag isn't there and pieces together the truth that she'd lied about leaving it at school. When he confronts her, asking if she had even attended school today, Kaori admits that she was only allowed out of the hospital for a brief time. She had wanted to visit the school because she felt herself starting to forget it, as if the memories were slipping away. As Kousei takes Kaori home on his bike, she clings tightly to his shirt as she cries. He couldn't bring himself to ask why she's crying. Instead, they ride in silence. One evening, Kousei finds Nagi sitting alone on the stairway. As they talk, Nagi admits that she looks up to her older brother. Kousei in return reveals that he admires a girl he can never be with, a girl who brought color and vibrancy into his dull, monotone world. The next day, Kousei visits Kaori in the hospital. She immediately scolds him for forgetting to bring the keneally he'd promised her, but he explains that they were sold out. Just then, Ryota mentions that Kousei has been teaching a girl to play the piano. Kousei quickly adds that it was Hiroko's idea and downplays his involvement, trying to shrug off the praise. His friends notice a lipstick mark on Ryota's shirt. Tsubaki gets angry and attacks him. Kaori scolds Ryota, insisting that he has no time to be fooling around with girls and should focus on practicing instead. Annoyed, Ryota snaps back, saying he's doing his best to teach and practice whenever he gets home. The tension escalates into a heated argument between them, but as quickly as her anger flares, tears well up as she apologizes for her outburst, admitting she lost control of her emotions. Kaori asks Kousei if he'd ever consider a double suicide with her. He freezes, stunned by her words, but before he can react, she says it's a joke. Yet the comment lingers in his mind. The next day at school, Kousei can't stop thinking about it. Tsubaki notices his distant behavior and asks if he's feeling sick. Kousei insists that he's fine, trying to brush off her concern. Sensing something is wrong, Tsubaki suggests they visit Kaori together, thinking it might help. However, Kousei refuses, saying he's not planning to go. Puzzled, Tsubaki wonders if they had a fight. She later confides in Nao, expressing her concern. Tsubaki admits that if Kousei's problem is related to music, she doesn't know how to help him. But the one thing she feels certain about is that seeing Kaori might lift his spirits. At home during a piano lesson with Nagi, Kousei seems lost in thought. Noticing his distraction, Hiroko decides to cut the lesson short, sensing that he needs a break. As Kousei leaves, Nagi, who has been watching him, follows him out. She catches up to him at the park, determined to cheer him up. Her playful antics manage to pull a laugh from him. Kousei apologizes for making her worry. The next day after school, Ryota waits outside Kousei's classroom. As soon as Kousei steps out, Ryota informs him that they're going to visit Kaori and insists he comes along. Kousei refuses to go. Frustrated, Ryota snaps at him and accuses him of running away after everything Kaori has done for him. Ryota grabs Kousei by the shoulders, forcing him to face him. Kousei falls to his knees, tears spilling down his cheeks as he breaks down. Desperate, he asks Ryota what he should do. Memories of Kaori's tearful apology flash through his mind, her saying that she was sorry for reminding him of his mother's illness and confessing that maybe it would have been better if they'd never met. Ryota listens, his expression softening as he kneels beside Kousei. He tells him that what truly matters is showing up for her, being there in her time of need. Ryota adds that if he were in Kousei's position, he would do anything for the girl he likes. He reminds Kousei that whenever Kaori wants to lean on someone, it's always him she turns to because he's the one she trusts the most. At the hospital, Kaori looks up as Kousei enters her room, relieved yet surprised to see him. She admits she thought he might never come. He admits that he doesn't know what to say. Kaori asks him to go back to the way things were before, to forget about her entirely and press a reset button. The request hits him hard. Kousei storms out of the room. Later, Kousei approaches Nagi and asks if she'll perform with him at the upcoming school festival. Nagi agrees, but in the days leading up to the event, she's overwhelmed with anxiety. Hiroko notices her struggle and offers calming words, helping Nagi regain her focus. On the day of the festival, Kousei and Nagi prepare to take the stage. On the stage, the crowd gasps at the sight of Kousei, especially since he's known as her big brother's rival. The two greet the audience with a polite bow before sitting side by side at the piano. As their fingers touch the keys, the air fills with music. Nagi's friends are stunned at how much she's improved in such a short time. Nagi herself feels calm for once, playing with ease. Kousei, still in tune with the piano, suddenly picks up the pace, causing the melody to shift unexpectedly. Nagi's eyes widen in shock, unsure of why he's doing this. The audience notices the tempo speeding up as Kousei's bass line starts to dominate, consuming the melody. Kousei challenges Nagi silently, daring her to keep up with him. Determined, Nagi pushes herself, believing she understands Kousei on a deeper, more personal level. She pours her heart into the performance, meeting his challenge head-on. Watching from the audience, Takashi is awestruck by his sister's incredible playing. Meanwhile, Ryota dials Kaori's number, keeping her on the line so she can hear the performance. By the time the piece ends, Kaori's cheeks are wet with tears. The audience erupts into applause, cheering loudly for the duo. Nagi, overwhelmed with emotion, feels her eyes welling up with tears. Backstage, Kousei is confronted by Takashi, who seethes with jealousy that Kousei chose to play with Nagi. Takashi demands a rematch, insisting on the chance to beat Kousei in the upcoming piano competition. Kousei pats Nagi's head gently, acknowledging her efforts with a reassuring smile. Nagi can't hold back the tears, feeling a rush of gratitude as she thanks him for his support. The next day at school, Mika confronts Nagi with an unusual burst of anger, startling her since he's never spoken to her before. He questions her decision to play a duet with Kousei and demands to know how she even knows him personally. Meanwhile, Kousei visits Kaori at the hospital and finds her on the rooftop, playing music for two children gathered around her. Kousei watches her for a moment before stepping forward. He challenges her to perform one more duet with him one more time. At the hospital, the doctor informs Kaori and her parents about the high risks of the surgery, emphasizing that it might not be successful. Despite the warning, Kaori remains resolute, her mind made up. She insists on going through with the operation, determined to take the chance. In the music preparation room, Kousei practices with Kaori on the phone, correcting him whenever he misses a note. He protests, explaining that he's only just started practicing, but Kaori refuses to let up, accusing him of slacking off. Her voice, sharp with frustration, carries through the line as she scolds him. Watching this exchange quietly from the corner, Ryota observes the familiar dynamic between them. Eventually, Kaori, annoyed, hangs up on Kousei. Later, a nurse enters Kaori's room asking if she's ready for the next stage of her treatment. Meanwhile, Kousei arrives at the hospital to visit her but finds her room empty. Confused and growing anxious, he hesitates, debating whether to wait for her or ask a nurse for information. Just as he contemplates what to do, he's approached by Kaori's parents. They notice his worried expression, and after he explains that he couldn't find Kaori, they decide to take him to her. Together, they reach the rehabilitation room. There, they watch in silence as Kaori undergoes her therapy. Kaori's parents explain to Kousei that she is determined not to lose her stamina or muscle strength. Her goal is to play the violin on stage again, and she refuses to give up. They express their gratitude to Kousei, believing he was the one who inspired her to fight and start walking again. Kousei, surprised, reassures him that he didn't do anything special. Her father says that when Kaori saw Kousei's devotion and passion for music, it reignited her own spirit, bringing back color to her gray, fading heart. Meanwhile, at the library, Tsubaki confides in her friend about Kousei's relentless practice for the upcoming piano competition. She worries about his entrance exam preparations. Now, however, reassures her, explaining that music-oriented high schools often focus on a student's artistic achievements. While they still test on standard subjects, these schools build their reputations by admitting top performers first. Since Kousei hasn't competed in 2 years, his recent achievements are lacking. But the upcoming Eastern Japan piano competition in December is highly prestigious. For the school, there's no better way to bolster their image than by admitting the winner of such a renowned event. Later, as Tsubaki gives Kousei a haircut, she masks her feelings of jealousy towards Kaori. Though she hides it well, her heart aches with the realization that Kaori holds a special place in Kousei's life. Kaori heads to her rehabilitation appointment, ready for the session. The nurse, noticing her alone, asks if she's not waiting for her friend to join her as usual. Kaori smiles faintly and responds that he won't be coming today. On the day of the piano competition, Kousei sits backstage eating a sandwich. Suddenly, Emi approaches him, her intense presence making his hands tremble with anxiety. Kousei offers her a piece of his sandwich, and to his surprise, she accepts. The two share the snack in silence. Just then, Takashi spots them together. Kousei, noticing his stunned expression, holds out the sandwich to him as well. Takashi hesitates but eventually joins them, the three spending a rare moment of companionship before their performances. When Takashi's name is called, he feels a surprising sense of calm. The usual nervous energy that tightens his chest seems to have faded. As Takashi steps onto the stage and begins playing his set piece, his mind drifts to his past rivalry with Kousei. He recalls the countless times he wanted to surpass Kousei, to be the better pianist. The audience erupts into applause as Takashi finishes his performance, with Nagi cheering him enthusiastically from her seat. But as she claps, it dawns on her that Kousei will be playing next. Torn, she grapples with her conflicted feelings, unsure of whom to cheer for. Backstage, Takashi, exhausted from pouring his heart into the performance, collapses to his knees. Overwhelmed, he wonders if his music reached the audience the way Kousei and Emi's always seem to. Kousei steps forward, helping him to his feet. Takashi realizes that Kousei isn't just a rival, he's becoming something of a hero in his eyes. Someone who pushes him to be better. Tsubaki, thrilled with her good grades, heads straight to the music preparation room, ready to share her excitement with Kousei, but finds it empty. Meanwhile, Kousei and Ryota visit Kaori at the hospital to wish her a happy new year. Kaori greets them warmly, but gives Kousei a stern look, clearly displeased that he isn't practicing. Kousei watches as Kaori and Ryota talk, sharing smiles and laughter, and feels a deep sadness. The girl he cares for seems to be drawn to his best friend instead, leaving him to feel like an outsider, merely there to fulfill her needs. The next day, Kousei and Tsubaki walk together when it suddenly starts raining. They dash to take cover under a shop's awning. Kousei buys 2 drinks from a vending machine and they stand side by side. Tsubaki confronts Kousei. She tells him she knows why he hesitated to visit Kaori. It's because Ryota was there and he can't handle watching them together. She points out that his feelings for Kaori are obvious and scolds him for harboring them when he knows she's dating his friend. Tsubaki's expression hardens as she tells him he should fall in love with her instead. The sudden confession shocks Kousei, leaving him speechless, but before he can respond, she kicks him in the shin and runs off, tears streaming down her face. The next day at school, Kousei spots Tsubaki walking down the hallway, but she quickly turns away and runs in the opposite direction, avoiding him completely. During the softball practice, Nao notices Tsubaki's odd behavior. She seems to be purposefully hitting the ball towards the music room, as if trying to vent her frustration at Kousei. Kousei, meanwhile, is distracted, replaying Tsubaki's words over and over in his mind. He struggles to focus, and Hiroko, noticing his lack of attention, scolds him sharply for his poor performance. Kousei, feeling the weight of his emotions, finally opens up to Ryota and admits that he likes Kaori. Ryota smiles knowingly, as if he had already guessed it. He teases Kousei, trying to lighten the mood, but when they reach Kaori's hospital room, they're met with a sudden rush of panic. Nurses are frantically entering the room, working to keep Kaori conscious as they assure her the doctor is on the way. Kousei and Ryota stand frozen at the door, watching in shock as Kaori shakes, her body struggling against the pain before she loses consciousness. Fear grips both of them as they witness her seemingly slipping into cardiac arrest. On his way home, Kousei notices a cat collapse after being hit by a car. The sight feels like a grim omen, a sign that something terrible is happening. He quickly scoops up the injured cat and rushes to the nearest vet clinic, desperate to save it. Despite his efforts, the cat doesn't make it. Kousei washes his blood-stained hands. The realization of the loss hits him all at once, and he breaks down, crying in agony, overwhelmed by grief and helplessness. Hiroko tries calling Kousei several times, but he doesn't pick up, and worry begins to gnaw at her. She recalls a memory of Tsubaki, tearfully begging her to save him. Hiroko makes her way to Kousei's house. She lets herself in, announcing her arrival, and finds him, sitting on the floor of his room, knees pulled to his chest. Determined, Hiroko pulls him up to his feet, urging him to practice, but Kousei looks defeated. He confesses that he can't do this anymore. He questions why everything always seems to end in pain. He admits that he wanted to play the piano to make his mother better, to simply experience the joy of falling in love, but it all feels hopeless now. Later, when Kousei arrives at school, he finds a letter on his desk. Kousei immediately recognizes the stationery as Kaori's. He opens the letter to find a single line written inside it. I want Keneally's. At the hospital, Kaori greets him with a bright smile, but she quickly notices his upset expression. She tries to lighten the mood, making small talk to break the awkward silence between them. When she spots the bag of Keneally's in his hand, her eyes light up, and she insists they go outside to eat them. Despite Kousei's reluctance, Kaori insists. He gently lifts her onto his back and heads to the hospital rooftop. When they step outside, they're greeted by the sight of fresh snow falling. Kaori's face lights up with pure joy, and for a moment her illness seems far away. Kousei sets her down on a bench. He admits that he's stopped playing piano. Every time he does, the people he cares about leave him, and he doesn't want to be left alone anymore. Kaori listens before reassuring him that he still has her. Then she tells him that her surgery is scheduled for the same day as his upcoming competition. Kousei confesses that he hasn't touched the piano in a week. He doubts that he can play well in the competition with everything that's happening, feeling lost and unprepared. Kaori, determined to lift his spirits, shakily stands up and pretends to hold her violin, mimicking her usual confident posture, but her strength quickly gives out, and she collapses into Kousei's arms. She clings to him, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking as she pleads with him not to leave her alone. On the day of the competition, Kousei stands in the hallway, head lowered. Takashi and Emi worry about him, sensing the weight of his emotions. When his name is called, Kousei steps onto the stage, but doubt overwhelms him, and he starts to break down. Suddenly, a sneeze echoes from the audience. It's Tsubaki. The familiar sound catches his attention, grounding him in the moment. It reminds him of the friends who have supported him all along. Kousei begins to play. His performance is filled with emotion. The audience watches, captivated by the intensity and beauty of his music. As Kousei plays, he knows that everyone who has made his life fuller, who has pulled him back from the brink, is watching him. He doesn't want to let them down. The sound of the piano flows through him, and he feels an overwhelming surge of music filling every part of him. In that moment, he no longer feels alone. Meanwhile, Kaori is in the middle of her surgery. Both she and Kousei are connected, aware of each other's presence, their lives intertwined even across the distance. Kousei vows silently to himself that he will never leave her alone. He plays with all his heart, hoping his music reaches her, praying she will overcome her illness. As he plays, Kousei sees himself among the clouds, and in his mind's eye, Kaori stands beside him, her violin in hand. Together they make music that binds them, uniting them, but then the vision starts to fade. Kaori slowly disappears, and bright lights begin to pour from the sky, pulling her away. Kousei calls out to her, desperate, begging her not to leave him. And in that moment, he realizes the surgery was unsuccessful. By the time Kousei finishes his performance, tears are streaming down his face. At the funeral, Kaori's parents express their gratitude to Kousei, thanking him for bringing happiness into their daughter's life. They hand him a letter she left for him. As spring approaches, Kousei finally opens up the letter and begins to read. In her words, Kaori reveals that she had admired him as a child and was inspired to play the violin because of him. She shares how thrilled she was to be in the same junior high school, yet how she couldn't summon the courage to speak with him. Kaori confesses to Kousei that she had told Tsubaki she was in love with Ryota, a lie she told to get closer to him. She explains that as a child, she had undergone surgery and had regular hospital visits. After collapsing in 7th grade, she found herself in and out of hospital repeatedly. She reflects on the precious moments they shared together. And in the end, she admits that she loves him. Along with the letter is a photo of them from their younger years. Later, Kousei runs into Tsubaki, who reminds him gently that she will always be there for him, standing by his side.